Alright, so if you guys have been watching all these videos, we're helping you work out problems at home to study for your 1A test. So now we're going to be working out problems in this section for Learning Target 3, which says I can solve literal equations. So for literal equations, you actually use the same steps as regular equations and inequalities. So for number 6, what value of m satisfies the equation? I'm looking for m. I want to find m. So what equation do I get when I do m equals? So the very first thing you should do is draw your wall over your equal sign. And now if I want to find m, that means I need to get m by itself on this side. I don't want to move the m. I want to keep it over here and find what it equals. So I'm going to cover the m and whatever's touching it, which would be the x right now, which means I need to move this -5 because I need to get everything else to the other side so I can find mx. So I'm going to move a -5 by making it positive, because if we do inverse operations, the opposite operation, that's what will help us get it to the other side. So now the -5 and +5 cancel. On this side, I'm left with mx equals, and then let's talk about this. Can we do z plus 5? No, because they don't both have a z. So this is why these equations are called literal, because you literally write what it says. You can't simplify these most of the time. So if they don't both have a z, I just have to literally write z plus 5. So now what value of m? We're still looking for m. So if I cover m, now I need to move the x. So the x is touching the m, which means they are multiplying. Opposite of multiplying by x is to divide it, and that'll cancel it since we did the inverse or the opposite. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So I'm going to divide this whole side by x to get that x over here. So now all we're left with is m equals z plus 5 over x. Let's talk about this. You can't do z divided by x. Those are not like terms. They're not both z's. They're not both x's. They don't simplify. Same thing with the 5 and the x and the 5 and the z. So you literally write what it said down here. So z plus 5 divided by x. And this is your answer. So literal equations a lot of times are easier because you don't have to do any of the simplifying with the numbers. So let's go now and let's look at number 7. So number 7, a lot of you said you struggled with this. Love y'all. Reading is hard. Just make sure you read the problem. The first thing they want us to do is write the equation for this problem. So if you go back and you read this, it says area of a circle A equals. Y'all can write A equals. You know how to do that. Okay? The next part says the product. What does the word product mean in math? And what I mean by that is, what operation are we doing if it says product? What does the word product symbolize? Multiplication, right? So if I'm doing the product, that means whatever's listed next, I'm multiplying those things. So if this says the product of pi, and they want us to use this symbol, so pi times, because it says the product, so times the radius squared, and they want us to use r squared. So this is all you had to do for the first step, guys. A equals pi r squared, or pi times r squared. Now, if you read the second part, it says rewrite in terms of pi. So what this means is get pi equals, or find what pi would be. If I want something in terms of pi, I want you to tell me what pi is. So we need to solve for pi. All right? So if I want pi, I'm going to draw my wall, and I'm going to cover up the pi. So if you look at r squared, it is multiplying right now. So how do we move the r squared? By doing the opposite of multiplying, which is to divide. What you do to one side, you do to the other. And on this left side, can we do a divided by r squared? No. So we're literally going to write a over r squared equals, and now all you're left with over here is pi. So didn't we just find pi equals? Yes. So this is going to be your answer. So really, this one wasn't tricky. It was just a fancy way of telling you to find pi or solve for pi. So it's still just the same literal equations that we've been doing. All right. Now, a bunch of you emailed or texted about number 8. So let's look at number 8 too. Love y'all. They gave you the equation. Why were y'all puzzled? It literally says A equals HB divided by 2. So they're telling you this is the equation to use. Okay. Now, if you read the question, it says, what is the result for solving for H? So they want you to take this equation. I'm going to rewrite it down here. A equals H times B divided by 2. And they want us to solve it. So I'm going to draw my wall for H. Okay. So this looks very similar to one we did in the section 1 video of the test, where the H is in the numerator. So when I go to cover H, I cover the whole numerator, the whole top part of that fraction. Now this says divided by 2. So what's the opposite of dividing by 2? That's how we'll move it. So the inverse of division is to multiply by 2. Those will cancel. And then what you do to one side, you do to the other. So 2 times A is just 2A. And you can leave it 2.A. That's fine. Equals HB. And now we want to solve for H. So again, when I go to cover H this time, I've got to move what's on the same side over there because we want H by itself. So I need to move this B. They're touching, which means they're multiplying. Opposite of multiplying by B is to divide. Now, a bunch of y'all are dividing the H. The H is what you want to find. So you cover H, you leave it, you don't do anything to H. We're just moving the B. And now this says H equals 2A divided by B. And that's your answer. You just solved this equation for H. Alright, so the last literal equation, the last type of literal equation you'll see on your test is very similar to this one right here. So it says solve the following equation for X. So I'm going to draw my wall. And I'm going to cover X. And right now the V is touching the X, so that gets covered. So the first thing I need to move is this negative 8. So I'm going to make it positive so it cancels. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. And now one more time, this is not 8W. That does not have a W. You cannot combine those and make that 8W or 9W or whatever else crazy mess y'all will make it. It's just W plus 8. That's why it's called a literal equation. You literally write what it says. So this is W plus 8. Bring down your equal bar. And then we're left with Vx over here. So now once you're here, I want to solve for X. So I'm going to cover X. I need to move this V. So the V is touching, which means they are multiplying. Opposite of multiply, divide that V. And so we're going to get, this says X equals, which looks great. So we're going to get X equals W plus 8 divided by V. I'm literally writing what it says. All right, and we've just solved all of our literal equations. So make sure you're working these out at home, watching this if you get confused. And as long as you know how to solve each of these, you should be good for your test.